Hi guys, I started learning Ableton around 5 weeks ago and this is the first time that I create a remix, so I thought I'd share this tutorial with other beginners like me to explain how I did it. Let's start by listening to the track.
It's a fine day, people open windows. It's a fine day, people open windows. It's a fine day, people open windows. It's a fine day. It's a fine day, people open windows. They leave their houses just for a short It's a fine day, people open windows. They leave their houses just for a short It's a fine day.
Let's start talking about the vocals. I got the original track from YouTube. You can find it, Jane, It's a Fine Day. And then I added a folder here, my desktop, so I can see the audio files from my desktop. I drag and drop it. And Ableton has this ability called warp where it fixes the tempo to your track. So I set mine to 125. And the problem with this specific track that the singer was more like talking and she wasn't really on tempo. So for example, if we start listening from here, let's turn, so I have the metronome on. So let's listen for a bit. As you can see, it's not exactly on tempo. So what we can do is adding more markers to fix the tempo. But because this is a long track, what's advisable to do is to drag it to the arrangement view. So as you can see here, I'm clicking on the clip, then I click on tab, and I will paste it here. And then I will break it to smaller pieces so I can put the marker here. Let me zoom in a bit. So if I put the marker and let's say I click, I think it's Ctrl E. So now I separated the two tracks or two pieces, and obviously I can repeat that for the remainder of the track. So if I select both and again click tab, when I drag it, now I have the two slices. But if you look down here, you will see that the first slice still shows the remainder of the track, but it has a start and end. So this is the start marker and there's an end marker. So if you don't want all this kind of, let's say, distracting noise, you can just right click, crop sample, and now you have only the piece that you want to concentrate on. So let's start by adding two markers for the beginning and the end. And then what we can do is, the thing with markers is when you move them left and right, they affect obviously what's on left and right. So let's say this right piece from this marker to this one doesn't have any problems with tempo, and you're trying to fix this one. So if you're moving left and right, you can see that it's affecting both sides. So if you want to focus on just this one, then create another marker and then start doing your modifications here. And this way you're not affecting the other part. Another thing is you can see all these white dots. So this is Ableton's kind of suggestion how to fix the track to be on tempo. So let's listen to it again. And what I like to do is put the track in a loop. So I'm highlighting this and Control L to enable the loop. And this way, when I play it constantly, I can just sense what's going on. Let's start playing.
It's a fine day, people open windows.
Sorry about that. I'm gonna disable this one. Well, let's start by listening here.
It's a fine day, people open.
Well, let's add a marker here. And listen again.
It's a fine day. It's a fine day, people.
As you can see, it's a bit slow. So let's move it here.
It's a fine day, people open windows. It's a fine day, people.
So as you can see, the fine was a bit slow, right?
It's a fine day, people open windows.
Same.
It's a fine day, people open windows.
So as you can see, slowly we're getting on tempo. Like as I keep like fixing those with adding markers. Let's listen to it again.
It's a fine day, people open windows. They leave their house.
See how loud
just for
this part that is not fixed is pretty slow. And again, let's listen to the small part that I fixed.
It's a fine day, people open windows.
Fix this.
It's a fine day, people open windows. They leave their house.
Again. So yeah, honestly, it's pretty straightforward. And with the white dots that are suggested by Ableton, it makes your life easier. So I guess the only hint that I would give is put a beginning and end marker. And again, when you're working on a section, so you don't affect other sections, yeah, like put an end marker for that section, then work inside of it. And this should basically do it for you. Now that I broke the vocals to smaller pieces and fixed the tempo, I put them all in one track. So again, this is called a session view. Every rectangle is a clip, and every line is called a scene. So you arrange clips in a scene and then you listen to them. So here I started experimenting. Again, if we listen just to the vocals, they're pretty plain.
It's a fine day, people open windows.
So I started thinking how I can make them more interesting. So if we click on this clip and look down here, I click Shift Tab, and you can see that I added this effect, Dreamy Amp Space. So let's listen without the effect.
It's a fine day, people open windows. It's a fine day.
And now with the effect.
It's a fine day, people open windows. It's a fine day, people.
So definitely, adds more of this kind of reverb, I guess spacey reverb. So what I did, I went to Audio Effects, and I believe under Utilities, Audio Effect Rack, Amp Simulation, and that's where I found the Dreamy Amp Space. And basically what I did, I put this track in a loop. That's my favorite thing to do, is just put something in a loop and start playing it endlessly and enable the hot swap. So as you can see this icon here, when you enable hot swap, then you can start trying different things. So when we are playing this one,
it's a fine day, people open windows. It's a fine
I'll enable the hot swap,
day,
and now I'm gonna try it with the clean guitar amp.
People open windows. It's a fine day, people open windows. It's a fine day, people open windows. It's
So yeah, this is how I basically try and experiment. So once I chose this one, and you know how in dance tracks you play a phrase, you repeat it, and every time you add a new element. So I started with the Dreamy Amp space, and then I added another repetition, but I added the same sentence with a different effect. It's called trans pad gate. So let's listen to it by itself.
It's a fine day, people open windows.
Let's put it in a loop, I guess. And
It's a fine day, people open windows. It's a fine day,
yeah,
people
so
open windows.
it has this cool kind of like how it breaks down the voice. And I mixed both the kind of the reverby amp with this effect on the second repetition, and I changed the volume. So if I click on Shift Tab, and I'm here on the automation tab down here. So if I put it on mixer track volume, you can see that I set the entire volume to -10, and for the other piece I put it as -2, a bit higher. And one thing I noticed is those effects, because they have kind of this delay effect, when you click stop or when you basically end the clip, the sound plays after that. So that's why if you look here at the far right, I added this volume where it goes to -infinity. So if I remove this, let's listen to it. Notice how when I stop, I'm gonna remove the loop, the sound still plays.
It's a fine day, people open windows.
So notice how it still plays. So that's how basically things like that you need to kind of pay attention. So when you have like breaks in your song where they're supposed to be silent, just make sure you take those clips and you add just at the last, kind of bar, I guess, make the volume to -infinity. Let's talk about the bass. So if we look down here, those are my notes. Let's play them. I'm just gonna put it in a small loop. Pretty simple. The thing is, I don't know music theory, so I don't know how to write notes that fit with the song. And this is where Ableton and Google come to help. So I went and Googled what key the song is playing in, and the results showed that it's a C sharp. So here on the left, I put that C sharp minor, that the scale is C sharp and minor. Now, the way this helps you is, I'm going to remove fold and I'm going to explain. When you click on the button scale here, Ableton will only show you the notes that belong to the scale, meaning any note that you choose, you draw here, is not going to be wrong because it belongs to the scale. So that's one thing you can do. So I enabled the scale button and I started experimenting. And once I was done, I just click on fold. So basically fold removes all the unused notes and just what you chose, just kind of like a summarized view. And again, I started playing this pattern repeatedly. Now, regarding how did I choose the sound, I'm gonna click Shift Tab. So I'm using Expand. So it's a plugin called Expand, and if I click here on the wrench, we can see it. So what I usually do, again, I put the hot swap. I start playing the notes that I wrote in a loop, and I put a hot swap enabled here, and I start going through the sounds. And when I like a sound, I click on save, and then I would have it under users. So now I have like a more limited list, and then I make my final decision, basically choose from that list. So that's how I came up with the bassline. Now moving to the break, which basically happens between the intro and the verse. Let's listen to it.
It's a fine day.
So what I did, I went and I took the fine from here,
It's going to be a fine night tonight.
and using the warp marker here, I stretched the I to make it like extra long. And another thing I did, which was honestly by accident, is in this scene, I defined the next action. So basically you can say when this scene ends, what do you want to happen next? So this is defined in the follow action, and I chose to play the next track. And in the action time, so if you look here up on the tempo, my tempo signature is 4/4, so every measure is 4 beats. So instead of playing the four beats, so this should have been 1/0/0, I'm playing 3 beats out of the entire measure. In this way, it breaks immediately into the next scene, and it's definitely a cooler effect. So let's play it again.
It's a fine day.
Now I'm gonna change it to play the entire measure, and I want you to kind of feel the difference. It's a bit too slow for me, the break.
It's a fine day.
See how it's the fine was too long? Like you're waiting too long to break into the next. So I'm gonna put it back as 3, and let's listen from here.
It's a fine day. People open windows. It's a fine day.
Definitely cooler. Like anyway, that's something came by chance and experimentation, I guess. So that's how I created this break. Now moving to the drums. Honestly, it's very simple. I guess it's the standard where you play a note every beat. So instead of putting claps or a hi-hat, I went to drums, and I first I wrote the notes, and then I started trying different drum kits. And for kind of the ticker track, if you want to call it, I found this cool sound called Perkwood. Let me see, where is it here? Here we go. So if we listen to it separately, let me put that here.
It's a fine day. People open windows.
So just playing it every beat, and then I backed it up by this kind of like kick mode. It's pretty fat, if that's the right term. And yeah, and I repeated the same bass lines that I had before. So let's listen to it. Yeah, so the drums were pretty straightforward, just playing a note every beat. Now I'm gonna talk about the second break that happens here. And honestly, I struggled a lot because I couldn't find like a nice smooth way where the bass changes from this pattern here to this pattern here. Let's listen to those two patterns, and then I'll show you how the break happened. And now this line. I'm using almost the same notes, but it's a different pattern, and whenever I put them immediately after one another, it was a really strange transition. So what I did, again, I'm gonna play this one. So I started kind of preparing the listener to that it's gonna change. So I changed the second half of it. So as you can see, the second half is now different. And then I added the break. So the break also, let's listen to it. So I took "It's a Fine Day," but only the first sentence.
It's a fine day.
So it only plays one bar, while the ticker track plays 2 bars. And if I remember right, let me see here. Yeah, the total is 2. So this one is only 1 bar, as you can see, and the ticker is 2 bars. So it happens like this.
It's a fine day.
So it all happened gradually now, the transition, right? We start by the original bass line, and then we take the second half of the original bass line and we change it, and then we do this break where vocals only, sing for half of it, and now we have the second bar where it's just the ticker preparing us to the final transition where the bass line changes. And by the way, when the bass line changes, I also kind of like do 2 variations of it. So let's listen to that. Now let's listen to the entire kind of transition. I would say starting from here.
They leave their houses just for a short while. It's a fine day.
Yeah, so I'm kind of really happy with the way this kind of turned out to be. And again, I spent so many hours, and this is the beauty of the session view, because again, you create all these like tiny pieces, the clips, you move them around, you experiment as much as you want, and then when you're ready, when you have like everything arranged as you want, and you have all the scenes triggering the next action, so like, okay, play next at 3/4 of the measure, or repeat this one twice, and so on, then you're ready to record. So you click shift and record, and it will start recording for you in the arrangement view. And as you can see here, now that I recorded everything, I can also make some final changes. So I'm showing here the automation. So all these red lines are actually my volumes. As you can see, I'm just removing the volume like I explained when there's like delay and the sound is repeated. I don't want that to happen. And same at the end of the track where I basically just, fade out gradually. So that's pretty much it. It was a really fun project. Personally, I'm happy with how it turned out to be. And I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Cheers, guys.